You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest Alderman Howard Brookins, who would like to be the next state's attorney of Cook County. He is running in a tough Democratic primary. There are 6 other candidates, and we'll be going through some, if not all of those, as we proceed in the next few weeks. This election, the primary is February 5th of next year, so it's moving right up. Alderman Brookins is a lifelong resident of Chicago. He spent 2 decades in the law. He spent a year as an assistant state's attorney. People who don't know, there's a state's attorney and then there are about 800 or 900 other attorneys in that office with various titles. Hundreds of assistant state's attorneys. He was an assistant public defender for a year, a special assistant attorney general. He is the founding partner with Brookins and Wilson, a law firm, and been in practice now for, what, 15 years or so?
20 years.
20 years, okay, yes. 20 years. Okay, second term alderman from the South Side. That's the 21st Ward, just re-elected to your second term?
Absolutely.
Educational background is Mendel Catholic High School, Southern Illinois, Carbondale undergrad, Northern Illinois University Law School. He lives with his wife and their 2 kids on the South Side, and one of the things he says he wants to do is restore a sense of integrity and justice to the criminal justice system. And so that's a good segue into our show, because as the state's attorney of Cook County, which Mayor Richard Daley was, of course, before he became mayor.
Absolutely.
Did he do the right thing about the torture issue of those who are accused defendants? I think it's well known and agreed that certainly a number, perhaps it's the question of how many defendants were tortured into giving confessions when they are innocent. That was going on a reasonably large scale. Yep. In the Chicago Police Department. The state's attorney perhaps should have, maybe did know something about that. Well, and so did Mayor Daley, since he was the state's attorney, did he certainly knew at some point something about torture, and did he do the right thing?
I would have liked to seen him do more. They wrote the letter to, or Brezek wrote him the letter about torture. My understanding was in about 1983, 84 or so, as to when Brezek wrote the letter about the torture.
And the torture occurred when?
The tortures actually go back to the 1970s.
In the 70s, okay, so Brezek was the superintendent?
Brezek was the superintendent of police at the time.
He writes a letter telling then State's Attorney Daley about this, now Mayor Richard M. Daley. And what did Mayor Daley do about it?
Well, what Mayor Daley's official position has been that it is up to the police to investigate. And they didn't bring him any charges.
So he just ignored the letter? Is that
well,
what he said that?
He didn't say that he ignored the letter.
What did he do?
He said, well, he didn't do.
What did he say? What did Mayor Daley say?
The mayor said that after he got the letter and the conversation with Brezek, it was incumbent upon the police superintendent to go out and file an arrest or ask for charges or do something, and they did absolutely nothing with respect to that. There have been a litany of state's attorneys after that who also didn't do anything, and including the special assistant.
So if I get this right, the Mayor Daley is saying as state's attorney, he doesn't have any obligation when torture is going on in the Chicago police. His assistant state's attorneys are prosecuting crimes, taking those defendants. It's been said by some that the assistant state's attorneys were so close they could be sitting outside the room, hearing the screaming going on, Absolutely. Walk in and take the confession and prosecute the case. Is it your view that's what happened?
It is my view that that is exactly what happened, and that has been what has been testified to. And we know that out of the 200 people who were tortured, all of them were convicted. Many of them were on death row, and some of them were flat out exonerated, not just technically not guilty or some other nicety, but they didn't do it as proved by DNA and modern technology.
And the mayor just says, hey, not my job as state's attorney of Cook County to find out what's going on?
Well, I don't want to put that label on it, but he said that...
That's the equivalent. That's not his words.
Well, and right, and that's the way you're phrasing it. And
well, do you agree with that? You're the guest.
Excuse me. That can be interpreted as an adequate assessment as to what was said. But he did say that it was incumbent upon Brezek to go forward and give him charges, give him names, do something with respect to it, and Brezek did nothing.
You want to be state's attorney of Cook
County?
I
want to be state's attorney.
You know this is an important issue throughout Cook County,
Absolutely.
Perhaps especially so in the minority community, because those individuals were the primary, maybe not sole, but the primary victims of this practice, right?
They were the sole victims of this crime.
All right, so
Every victim was
you're talking to
African
those
American.
folks now. What is your assessment of Mayor Daley? I want your assessment, not mine. Did he do the equivalent of nothing when he knew there was wrongdoing going on, when he knew there was torture going on, or certainly allegations? Did he do the equivalent of nothing in terms of following up?
My assessment is that at that point, when he got the letter, he knew or should have known that there was torture going forward, and there should have been something further done out of that state's attorney's office, and nothing was done.
Nothing was done, okay. And so, saying that, do you expect you wouldn't be getting the support of Mayor Daley for this office?
I don't know.
You think he can still support you after you said that?
Well, Mayor Daley, I've always spoke truth to power, and I've said some things that the mayor hasn't agreed with. I've supported people against the mayor, and the mayor supported me in my last election. So I think that the mayor knows that I don't take unfair shots at him.
What about State's Attorney Dick Devine? Because he was the first assistant to Mayor Daley, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
So did he know?
Everybody
did he know about this torture?
Everybody in the office who had some authority was complicit with respect to.
Was Kunkel in the office at that time?
I believe at the time, and I'll even put the blame on Cecil Partee, because I came into the office under Cecil Partee.
Which was around roughly?
1989 to about 1990.
Cecil Partee had been appointed to the office.
Correct. And there was Mike Shabbat. And
first African-American appointed state's attorney, first African-American who was in the office, holding the office of state's attorney, although he was appointed. If you win, you would be the first African-American elected to the office.
That is correct.
So what did Cecil Partee do?
Cecil Partee didn't do anything either. Neither did Mike Shabbat. Neither did Ken Malateska, who was 2 and 3 at the time. Neither did Jack O'Malley, who was in office at the time.
So a long line of do-nothings?
Neither did Dick Devine, who got back in office.
Okay.
And so the litany goes on. Now, Dick Devine has a technical excuse because he represented Burge. And so he was technically conflicted out. However, they set up these...
He represented him as in terms of...
Civilly.
Because the state's attorney of Cook County was representing the police who were accused, is that right?
No.
No, he was representing as a private lawyer.
As a private lawyer at the time.
That was before he went to the office.
Before he went to the office. He had left.
So when he became the first assistant, he recused himself from that issue?
He recused himself from the issue. I would have liked to have seen him set up a Chinese wall and save the taxpayer some $7 million as opposed to going forward with respect to a special prosecutor. However, they didn't, and the special prosecutor was implicit with respect to what went on, because it's my understanding that out of some 50 police officers who were involved or implicated in this torture, all of the statute of limitations did not run under previous administration. Some ran actually while the special prosecutor was investigating the claim.
Under Devine?
Under Devine, but
under Devine's administration.
Under Devine's administration, however, again, Judge Bebo appointed this panel, and they did nothing.
All right. And now the U.S. Attorney is looking at this whole thing, right?
Correct.
So it may not be too late. If there was a conspiracy, if there was a cover-up, if there was something that would prevent the statute of limitations or toll it, would that be the word?
That would be the absolute word, and there is a possibility that they could go forward, and I think that that would be great for the taxpayers because we spend too much money. We're spending about $2 million a year in the pension funds of the people who were implicit in the torture. That's just pension funds. We spend tens of millions of dollars in legal defense, and now we're going to pay tens of millions of dollars in settlement money for the people who were exonerated.
So your solution, people have said, is it right that you've said we should indict a cop a month?
I never said that.
People said that and they're wrong. You're not saying that?
They're absolutely wrong, and I challenge the person who wrote that to say, when did I say it? What I have said and what I will do is that I will follow the evidence wherever it leads. I am not going to shy away from it. If that means prosecuting more police officers, then that's what will happen. If that means that police officers will not be prosecuted because there's no wrongdoing.
But taking the big picture, as you've seen it, you've been around the block a few times. Are the Chicago police out of control? You know, we read about quite a few things where off-duty police get in these brawls, you know, go after private individuals, right?
Right.
Then they flash their badge when somebody comes to, and they say everything's okay. So they are off-duty, or maybe they're on duty. So in general, are the Chicago police out of control?
I think there's been a culture that is been allowed to fester in the Chicago Police Department, and somebody needs to step up and take a strong stand.
Who needs to do that? The state's attorney?
Well,
is that
the state's attorney. However, it is the job of the superintendent of police, and I think Dana Starks has been doing that. If
he is the acting superintendent.
He's the acting superintendent.
But he's not in the running to become the superintendent, is he?
He can be.
But I mean, he's not. They had 3 people who were selected by a search group or something.
Correct.
He was not within those 3.
He had never submitted his name.
Oh, has he submitted it now?
I'm not sure.
Why wouldn't he?
I have no idea why he would not. I think that maybe he thinks that they have short shelf lives if you're the actual superintendent.
He'd rather be the acting and the second in command. Longer life, better job security. Is that what you're telling me? All right. So special operations has been disbanded because they've become discredited. Is that right?
Special
operations in the
Chicago Police Department. This whole series of scandals by the police, this whole series of outright criminal behavior, whether it was the Bird situation, whether it has been the situation with respect to the police officers and this brawl with the 4 businessmen, or with the situation where Abedi was shown on tape beating the barmaid, with the situation where this other young lady was allegedly punched in the face by a police officer.
Why are people up in arms about that?
Well, they are up in arms about it now.
I don't hear them. I mean, what are they doing? They re-elected Mayor Daley. He didn't even have any credible opposition, right? The African-American community jumped right with him. So did the Hispanic community. Reverend Jesse Jackson, did he support him? Mayor Daley?
I'm not sure if he openly supported him or not.
He certainly didn't support anybody else.
I don't remember seeing that. You're absolutely right.
Luis Gutierrez, Hispanic. Did he support Daley? Yeah, he did.
He did.
After making all that noise about this and that was wrong, what did he do? Well, what's the word for describing what Congressman Luis Gutierrez did to represent his constituents?
Well, maybe he was representing his constituents.
You mean by kissing up to Daley?
Well,
is that the best way to represent your constituents?
No, I think you need to take a strong stand. And I've always done that.
Did you tell Congressman Gutierrez that?
No, I haven't seen him to tell him.
Would you tell him that publicly?
Absolutely.
He might be watching the show.
Jeff,
he might be watching the show.
He might.
Are you telling him to take a stronger stand?
I believe that you should speak truth to power. And that's something that I've always done, and they can live by example. And let it be known, I did not support Mayor Daley in this last election. I openly endorsed another candidate.
Who was that candidate?
It was Bill Doc Walsh.
Yeah, guessed in this show, but he didn't have really a shot at it. Anybody who had a shot at it didn't want to take on Daley, right? Jackson didn't, Gutierrez did. Anybody with the credibility, name recognition, support organization.
Dorothy Brown had name recognition.
Not enough, not to be mayor. You know that, right?
Well, I did know that at the time. I hadn't seen her polls.
All right. Okay, there's a new setup in the police department now. They're supposed to be more independent in terms of the review that goes on when accusations are made. Is that sufficiently independent, or does something more need to be done?
It was the best we could get at the time. However, I think
we being the city council.
We being the city council.
We being you. You're part of the city council.
I have been pressing for police reforms since my first term in office. I was unable to get a majority.
Okay, so that's the best you can do, but you're saying it's not really
it's not
an
a done
independent,
deal yet.
And it's not an independent review board, independent
it's as independent as she makes it to be, and that is the administrator of the OPS.
Okay.
Correct. And what I mean by that, she has a term of office of 4 years that she can only be terminated for cause. So the mayor can't get rid of her. She can be as independent as she wants to, and if she takes her job seriously, then she's independent. If she thinks that she needs to cozy up to the mayor or
she
somebody
reports
else,
ultimately to the mayor, right? She doesn't report to the city council.
She does have to make public reports to the city council.
Yeah, but if she ultimately reported, if you folks could hire and fire her, then the city council will be in charge, right?
Well, technically, the city council can fire people.
Can you fire her, the person who heads up this board?
Well, we actually have a strong city council, and I believe that we can order anybody terminated.
Yeah, when's the last time you ordered somebody important terminated? It goes back to, I don't know.
Well, I don't know that
Johnny or one of those
I don't
guys.
know that it's actually happened, but it is a possibility.
Yeah, right. Pigs could fly, right? Okay. Reverend Al Sharpton, is he a plus in coming into Chicago, setting up shop?
I think anybody coming into Chicago had more eyes on the situation as to the atrocities and the things that have been going on in the city.
Is that a slap in the face, Reverend, in terms of Reverend Jackson, that
I don't think so.
Coming here? Isn't he saying that
Jackson's
not doing the job?
This town has...
You need two folks, at least two major people to deal with police brutality.
And this county has more African Americans than any other county in this country, and I think that this town and this county is big enough for Reverend Jackson and Al Sharpton.
Yeah, so you think they'll get the job done in terms of police brutality, or is Sharpton okay, or is he just out there to, get some numbers, get some press, and then move on?
I think that he's here for the long haul. I think that he sees
you like Reverend Al?
I like Reverend Allen,
You like Reverend Jackson?
Absolutely.
You like them both, not taking sides.
I think that you need people to shake the tree to get things done, and in different ways they shake the tree.
Are we, if you go into the Office of State's Attorney, there are what, 900 attorneys, something like that?
Near 900.
1,500 employees?
I thought it was closer to 3,000 employees.
Is it 3,000, you think?
Right.
Okay, and what's the budget?
The budget is near $100 million.
Okay. Are we what are the, there are lots of things they do, right? They deal with gangs, they deal with street crime, they deal with drugs, they deal with domestic violence.
And they represent the county, and they deal with pension
civil
funds,
stuff, criminal stuff,
and they deal with cops who they defend the police officers, sheriff, police, etc.
Are we allocating the resources in the right way in terms of street crime? Should there be more on street crime or less?
I think we ought to be smarter on crimes and how we're doing it. I think we ought to be smarter with our resources.
More substance abuse programs and fewer people put in jail for drug abuse. Is that right?
We ought to push that, but we ought to also look at how we're using our resources. With respect to major law firms now, they've done some things differently by utilizing paralegals, and I think that we may be able to use paralegals and then put attorneys and doing attorney stuff. Out of the near 900 attorneys, we only have 5 doing consumer fraud type of issues. I would like to reshuffle the deck. There are a lot of.
What would you take them away from?
Well, I think that in some cases,
you're going to have more doing consumer fraud, you're going to have less doing something else.
Well, I think that we can take some of them out of the courtrooms where we have 3 attorneys in some felony courtrooms. One of those attorneys is acting as a clerk. They're taking notes. They're running and making photocopies.
You can use a paralegal to do that?
We can use a paralegal to do that. I think that we ought to look at the management staff. We need to put them back in the courtroom, are actually representing people and doing what they're doing. And I think that we can shuffle the deck, and I think that we can get.
What's your experience? You got civil and we said you had a little bit of everything, sort of.
From soup to nuts.
A little bit of criminal, civil, but the guts of it. Right now, at your law firm, you do criminal defense, you do personal injury, you do litigation, right?
Well, right now our law firm has changed, but
you're telling me it's only 2 attorneys at this point, right?
My partner just made judge.
Okay, so is it fair to say you've never really administered a large group? And so maybe people look at the other candidates and say, have they done that? Because is that fair? Where's your administrative experience for this job?
With respect to that, I have administered as many as 6 attorneys and a staff as big as 12 at one particular point in time.
You think any of your opponents might have done more?
They may have, but none of my opponents who've been an elected official have never been a state's attorney. I have a unique experience with respect to practice in law.
I've never been an assistant state's attorney.
Well, never been an assistant state's attorney.
Larry Sefferton, he was not.
He was not. He was an assistant public defender. Same thing with Tom Allen, assistant public defender.
But you've only been there a year. You think that gives you a leg up?
Well, I've also been an assistant appellate prosecutor. I've been a special assistant attorney general. And so I have had a lot of experience in the prosecution.
How many trials do you have?
I've had thousands of trials.
To verdict?
To verdict, absolutely.
Thousands to verdict?
Thousands.
How many jury trials to verdict?
Well, in jury trials, it's been in the hundreds.
Hundreds, okay. You've been in the appellate courts? Have you been in the appellate courts?
I've argued in the appellate court, yes.
In the state system?
Yes.
In the federal system?
Yeah. Yes.
Have you argued in the state Supreme Court?
No.
Have you argued in the U.S. Supreme Court?
I have not.
Larry Sefferton says he has. Does that matter?
No. Well, Daley had not.
All right. And Sefferton, we should say for people who don't know, he's a Cook County commissioner. We hope to have him on the show along with others, and he is one of your opponents running in the Democratic primary out of Evanston. You like Larry?
I think Larry's a good guy. I know him very well. I've known him for a long time. As a matter of fact, Larry was actually helping me get a job after I left the office.
Is that right? After you left the office
of the state's attorney.
Okay. As assistant, so he helped you get a job.
Well,
what about his Alderman Tom Allen? You know him. He's a colleague of yours, right?
I do know him.
He's a good guy?
He's a good guy.
You like him?
He's a nice guy, yes.
He's a nice guy. You think you're better in terms of this office than
I think I'm better,
Sefferton and Allen?
I think I'm better suited, and I'm the most uniquely qualified and suited because of, one, I've demonstrated what this office needs, that I will speak truth to power, that my integrity will not be swayed based on political affiliations. I have gone up against.
You're better than Bob Milan now, though?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Is he the first assistant?
Bob Milan and Anita Alvarez.
Right. So they know the office. They've administered the office. They've run a bunch of attorneys.
And they're going to continue to run the.
Why wouldn't they do better? Why wouldn't they do better?
Because they are in the same rut. They can't see the forest for the trees.
They can't be a change agent?
They can't be a change agent.
You need a change agent. Okay. So patronage. You know, people are saying they often talk about patronage, and a lot of people say. Commissioner Claypool says, hey, patronage is not an issue in the state's attorney's office. These are lawyers. Does he have that right? Is there patronage going on in terms of who gets to be a state's attorney?
There's always been patronage in the state's
attorney. Did you get benefit patronage? Because, you know, your father was a state senator. He was an influential guy.
I can't say that it did not happen.
Would it be wrong? Okay, so
I cannot say that it didn't happen, but
that would not be damning in itself.
I clerked in the state's attorney's office for 3 years throughout law school, and my first offer was a job as an assistant public defender, and I came back to the office under Cecil Partee.
Right. Would you favor unionization of the state's attorneys?
I'm not sure about that.
You're open to it?
I am open.
Devine opposed it, right?
Well, Devine said that his hands were tied based on either appellate or Supreme Court
So you don't
decision.
know, you're open to it, but you're not taking a position either way?
I'm not taking a position as of this point, and the reason is that when I was in the office, the state's attorneys made more than the public defenders. So if you're talking about unionization to bring parity with respect to the money, that disparity as far as
would there be less patronage if you had unionized forces than it is now? You can just put people there. You can't quite do that with unions.
But
right?
you need to be able to put people there because uniquely seated as a state's attorney.
You need to be able to put 900 attorneys wherever you want.
Well, they act as you when they're in that courtroom, and they can do more damage than a public defender. And because
so you're not taking a position. You're not taking a position
rights.
on whether it should be
I
unionized.
am not.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm
talked
taking
about
a
public
position
corruption.
that they need to get paid parity, but I'm not.
Should that office be doing, state's attorney's office, should be doing a lot more about public corruption. It's basically been doing nothing for the last 2 decades,
nothing.
right? You had Don Tomczak, it's a U.S. attorney. You had Zorich, that's a U.S. attorney. You have Millennium Park with all that, well, I don't know if they've looked at that yet. You hired truck, hired tow, hired thief, whatever. That's all being pursued by the U.S. attorney, right? Devine ain't done squat.
Nothing.
I mean, would that be accurate? Would you agree? Has he done squat?
I don't believe so. I don't believe he's done enough.
Not a zero. Why is that?
I have no idea. And some people who have been in the office.
Are you critical of Devine for that?
I'm highly critical of Devine because of the main thing
for not doing more in public corruption.
Because of the main thing is it affects the African American community. When there are people, the Duff family, who are robbing the hope of a community to get a meager possibility of 25%.
So why is Devine doing that? Is that because he's a good bud with Mayor Daley?
Well, you tell me.
No, you tell me. You're the candidate.
I can't get into his head, but it appears that anything where it comes to ruffling feathers, that office hasn't done it. That office.
So you're highly critical of State's Attorney Dick Devine and his office.
I'm highly critical of the office for not doing anything on public.
But he has the office, so if you can't be critical of the office without being critical of him, can you?
Well, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Him and the office.
You are both.
But he doesn't make 100% of the decision. We also have two opponents who are running. They're in the office and they're in decision and they're in decision-making roles.
They got to take a hit for anything that's
absolutely. My chief of staff would take a hit for anything that I've done.
All right, let's go over to capital punishment. It seems we have capital punishment in the state. There's a moratorium that was started, 4 or 5 years ago, longer,
probably
7 years ago,
yeah,
by George Ryan.
I think the moratorium.
A lot of people say that capital punishment deters. Some people have done studies and they say for every capital punishment you deter 4 or 5 murders.
I don't believe it.
You don't believe? You don't think it deters?
I don't.
You oppose capital punishment?
I'm for the moratorium and I oppose capital punishment.
So you don't want to see it brought back ever, right?
I don't want to see it brought back.
You would like to see it legislated out of existence?
I would like to see it legislated out of existence.
And you think that
we've seen that?
How are you going to deter people from multiple murders? You know, in 1975 to 200, we had 281 people, death sentences. And in that group, only 12 were executed, but we had 158 people. I think it was the felony murder that gave them the conviction. You understand the felony murder rule?
I do.
What is that?
That is if you commit a murder in the course of a felony, or if a murder happens in the course of the felony, the person is actually guilty of the murder.
And are they eligible? Are they then eligible for the death sentence?
Getaway
under this Illinois law, would they be eligible for a death sentence?
Depends on the circumstances. Yes, they could be.
Multiple murders, does that make you eligible for death penalty per se?
Could be.
Could be, not just per se.
Well, it depends on how it happens. I mean, multiple murders could be
murder, you had 158
drug
felony murders and felony murder convictions, 75 to 2,000 on death row, receiving a death sentence. You had 129 murders of multiple murders. People didn't just kill one people, convicted of killing multiple individuals. You had, I think it was something like 33 murders of kids younger than 12 years of age. These were people for which the society said capital punishment was appropriate. You've taken that off the table. What's appropriate for those people in terms of a penalty? Assuming they're guilty. Assuming they're guilty, what's appropriate?
Well, we can't assume they're guilty.
Well, no, they've been found guilty.
No, because in this county, under this state's attorney, Out of the 200 people that were tortured, many of them were on death row. Many were exonerated. How will we bring those people back?
Of the people who weren't exonerated, how many of those folks do you think were guilty? Can you say that you can no longer conclude anybody's guilty of anything?
Well, I'm saying that the system is so broken.
You just let them all out. Is that what you're saying?
I never said let them out.
Well, what do you do with them?
What I said is that we leave them in prison. Without
life without parole.
Life without parole. Absolutely.
And you think that's suitable? Okay. More guns, less crime? You've heard that saying?
I've heard that saying.
Do you think it's wrong?
I think that with respect to gun control, I will be tough with respect to the laws that are on the books, but I don't believe that it is more laws that are going to do the trick.
Well, right now in the city of Chicago, if you're in a tough area and you think you'd like to have a gun to protect yourself in your home, it is illegal to possess that gun, right?
It is absolutely illegal.
You think that's
to
right?
possess,
Do you think somebody should be able to have a gun in your home to protect yourself?
A handgun.
Yeah. Do you think somebody should be able to have a handgun to protect themselves?
I've said it on the floor that I believe that responsible people, under circumstances, ought to have guns. The problem is
protect themselves. So also concealed carry. Should somebody, if they get a permit?
I won't go that far.
Are you open to it? A few months ago, you said you were open to it.
I said I'm open to it.
But you haven't decided.
I'm not. At this point, I'm not willing to go that far. Absolutely.
Right. Videotape confessions. We now have them. We now have them for people who are accused of murder, right?
Right.
And we videotape the interrogations, right?
Correct.
It's going well.
So far, I think videotape has added one of the dimensions that gets you to being sure that when you have a conviction or whether you have a confession, that the confession has been voluntary.
Alderman Brookins, thank you so much for coming. We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll. And we'll have you back. We'll cover some more issues. Let's go over to diversity. That's a major issue?
That is a huge issue. With nearly 900 attorneys and only 64 African Americans and 43 Hispanics, that is a number that has not changed since the 70s. That is despicable. That there hasn't been a better job with respect to diversity of personnel and diversity of thought in that office. It is all a lot of groupthink, which is how you end up with the same types of conclusions that you've been having in that office.
Wait, but if you want to focus on diversity, you have to ask yourself, what's the percentage of lawyers who are a minority in this area who would be eligible for that office, and what is that number?
That number is more than 64.
No, but what's the percentage that would be eligible?
It's not the percentage because there's a disproportionate number of African Americans that are in the public sector. They are not in major law firms. We're not in Baker and McKenzie. We're not in Sidley and Austin, any greater than.
No, but how do you get an idea of what percent are minorities right now in the state's attorney's office? Do you know?
Less than 6%.
And that's Hispanic, African American, Asian. That's
all
with
minorities? Respect to African American, they're about 6%, and with respect to Hispanics, I think that is less than 6% with 43.
And what should that number be?
That number should more reflect